Hey there, friends. Well, the left barely had a chance for their hair to go out before they set it on fire again. After the election, of course, there was a massive meltdown by the wackos on the far left. A little bit of a lull, and then all of a sudden, Trump starts to name his cabinet appointees. They lit it back on fire again. First, guys, go check out my friends over at Gideon Optics. These guys make some incredible optics. They have the brand new Granite MOS competition red dot sight that's out right now. You can get this thing for $249, regularly $319. It's got the largest MOA reticle inside the largest lens that they have available, engineered from feedback received from all the competitive shooters over the years that they've spoken to. This thing is tough, aircraft grade aluminum construction. And the battery change is extremely quick. This thing is nice. It's something that you probably want to use. Don't be fooled by the competition name on it, because this is for everybody. It's just that it's going to give really good response if you're in competition as well. So check them out. Gideon Optics. Use my code FTATF, again FTATF, and receive a nice little discount. Now, some of the cabinet appointees, people have been a little bit quieter about. I don't hear a lot of noise about Marco Rubio. However, that does bring me a little bit of pause with him being named as Secretary of State, because if the left likes him, I don't like him. I'd never have liked his stance on the Second Amendment, and I also thought he was a little soft. He also threw shots at Trump from time to time, which again, in some cases, it might have been warranted based on what was stated and said, the verbal attacks they made against each other. But nevertheless, Rubio does scare me a little bit. Let's see if he falls in line and does what he is supposed to do. They're starting to question Tulsi Gabbard. Nobody ever questioned Tulsi Gabbard. Whenever she was a Democrat, she suddenly leaves that party. Now everybody questions her. DEI is not a thing for them anymore. She is Polynesian, so she actually has two things going for her. She is not a white woman. She is a Polynesian woman. She checks two of the boxes, but it doesn't matter, because she's not a Democrat anymore. So now they're starting to question her. I feel like with her being attacked and put on the no-fly list, she is a perfect person to be put in charge of that department, and she's got the receipts. Now, Matt Gaetz, that's the main one people are questioning right now. Gaetz was picked as Attorney General by Donald Trump, and people are losing their mind. Now, let me tell you a couple things about Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is a little bit different. Of course he is. There are reports out there that Matt Gaetz is one of the only guys in D.C. here recently who has not accepted lobby money. That means a lot of people probably don't like him, because when you take lobbyist money, somebody has something on you. And when you refuse that lobbyist money, those who have been cashing those checks might see that as that person thinks they're better than me. In other words, they may think that Matt thinks he's better than them because he doesn't take that money. Therefore, he doesn't have anybody that he owes anything to. On the other hand, you have to look at Matt as being one of those kind of guys that I think he's hardcore Trump follower. The biggest thing is Trump never had a attorney general who understood him or believed in his philosophy. Always undermining Trump, always having issues with Trump. I don't think he's going to have that issue with Matt Gaetz. I think Matt Gaetz is going to take the agenda of Donald Trump and run with it. That's why I think people are pissed off. They realize that they don't have that insider element that's going to oppose Donald Trump on the inside, because that was what Donald Trump's problem was before. There were too many people on his team that didn't have any kind of alliance with Donald Trump. In fact, they had more alliances with his enemies. Therefore, that's why you had daily leaks and issues that constantly took place. So people don't like Matt Gaetz because they feel like Matt Gaetz is not a person that they can infiltrate and have leak things to and fight Trump all throughout until Trump gets rid of him. That's part of the problem. Now, clearly, there was another problem that some people had with Matt Gaetz at one point, and suddenly it did not become a problem. In other words, they let that go, and then it became a problem again. It's funny how that works in Washington, D.C. You see, there was a Justice Department investigation into Matt Gaetz that focused partially on whether or not he had engaged in sexual misconduct with a 17-year-old girl whenever he was an adult. The matter had come up as justice officials examined the actions of Gaetz' friend Joel Greenberg, a tax collector in Seminole County. Now, Greenberg pled guilty in 2021 to sex trafficking with a minor and other crimes and agreed to cooperate in the Gaetz probe. Greenberg was sentenced to 11 years in prison. So a couple of years later in 2023, the Justice Department dropped those charges against Matt Gaetz. And now they never stated a reason for dismissing those charges. They simply dropped them. Well, guess what? Now, the House Ethics Committee restarted that probe into Gaetz after Donald Trump named him as his pick for Attorney General. Now, Gaetz's resignation from the House of Representatives on Wednesday means that the committee no longer has jurisdiction over Matt Gaetz, but the panel is under increasing pressure to release its findings anyway in that investigation that occurred between 2021 and 2023. Now, more on that in a second as far as this committee or this organization that does this type of investigation. The girl, the 17-year-old that allegedly was part of this whole thing, this sex scandal, this trafficking thing. Again, it was a 17-year-old girl. I believe she was in high school. The attorney, or her attorney at the time, John Clune, posted on X after Matt Gaetz was listed as the Attorney General by Donald Trump, stating Mr. Gaetz's likely nomination as Attorney General is a perverse development in a truly dark series of events. We would support the House Ethics Committee immediately releasing the report. She was a high school student and there were witnesses. Well, the House Ethics Committee dropped those charges. So if that report is released, it will either show that Matt Gaetz did not do anything and the investigation proved that, or it will show that the investigation uncovered that he did in fact have sex with an underage person and that the House Ethics Committee covered that up and paid her off. Now, something that has always bothered me, and I am not going to let it get in the way of my morality and my personal feelings in this either. I have often felt if you have done something wrong, you should pay for it. I don't think, regardless of political party, if you have something deep and dark and you have abused your power and you have abused other people, whether it be mentally, sexually, physically, you should be held to account. It doesn't matter. I don't see people's positions, their rankings, as any type of hierarchy. There's no congressman that's any better than me. There's no garbage man that's below me. We are all equals until we prove otherwise, right? That's just the way I've always lived. I don't see anybody better than me or anybody worse than me. Your actions actually show me where our hierarchy is. If I consider myself better than you, if you're a piece of trash, well, yes, I'm not, so I consider myself better than you. But if you're a very noble person that does a lot of respectful things for other people and you look out for other people, you're probably a better person than me because I don't feel like I do enough of that. There is so far an $18.2 million congressional slush fund that I have always had a problem with. This is a report from 2021, so you know 3 years later there's a lot more that has taken place than this. Since 1997, the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights has paid out $18.2 million to settle 291 cases of workplace disputes for Congress, Capitol Police, the Architect of Capitol, and the Library of Congress. Guys, what this is essentially a slush fund that is re-upped every single year. Congress approves this money every single year, knowing that they're going to have problems, right? They know they're going to have these issues. They disguise it as if it's a discrimination type slush fund. That's how they get their approval, and that's why no one really talks about it. But what it really is, it's a slush fund that they dip into to pay off these perverts in Congress that are raping, molesting, and abusing sexually other people, whether they be staffers or whether they be civilians that they come in contact with and they abuse, rape, whatever. That's taxpayer money that we're essentially paying as hush money to shut people up because we don't want to litigate these things in a court of law. They even have their own website, the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights, and they talk about their mission. And again, the mission is super cushy whenever they talk about it, and it makes you think that they have some kind of a legitimate plan to protect people who are just trying to get by and don't want to be abused in the workplace. But again, this is all a front. This is cover for a slush fund for congresspersons and people in the federal government to sexually abuse other people and get those, let's just call them debts, paid off with taxpayer money so nothing ever hits the headlines. There's actually a board of directors and an executive director. These are all people either appointed by Congress in the Senate and the House, or some of the Senate and House people are actually ones that serve in this same agency. So a couple of things that I have with that, right? First of all, remember the Donald Trump thing with the 34 felony counts that he had? You remember what that was about, right? That was the whole Stormy Daniels thing. Essentially, Donald Trump allegedly used money, $130,000, for a hush payment to Stormy Daniels that was not disclosed. And it resulted in 34 felonies, right? We know that was abused. We know that was a total abuse of power. In fact, if you ask people who say, oh, well, you're voting for a felon, they can't even name what the felonies are for. They just don't know. They're just glad they have felonies. But nevertheless, Donald Trump got 34 felonies for not disclosing a $130,000 payment. However, we have over $17 million worth of payments that have been paid out for members of Congress, mostly members of Congress, but the Capitol Police and other folks in that federal area, in the D.C. areas, that have gone out to shut people up. No one's gotten any felonies. Nobody. No felonies out there. This is all hush money. Shut up, we're going to give you a few $1 million. They're paying it out to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars to obviously millions of dollars to shut people up, make them go away. Don't talk. Let me ask you something. If all this money is being paid out, but nobody's disclosing it, why are there not felonies? I mean, it applied to Donald Trump, right? Over $130,000 that got paid out by Donald Trump. That's what it was over, right? It was over a small amount of money. Not saying 130 is a lot for me, but for Trump, 130 is nothing. I mean, that's pocket change for him. But it's over $130,000 is what they gave him those 34 felonies for. Yet they're paying out millions for members of Congress to sexually abuse other people, and they're not disclosing that, and nobody is being called in on that. Let me be very clear about my stance on this. I support Matt Gaetz for Attorney General if he is innocent of the charges that the Department of Justice already dropped on him. If he's not guilty of that, I support him as Attorney General. But I want to be very clear. If he's guilty of it, and they're calling for the release of the whole entire report, the investigation into Gaetz. If he's guilty of it, release the data, release the details of it, release the full investigation. But release all the other names on that list and release all the other investigations. I don't want to just see Matt Gaetz because you people are butthurt about it. Yes, kick him to the curb if he's guilty. I got no use for the guy at Attorney General if he's guilty. So you put him in the bucket with everybody else out there who have paid for this sexual misconduct to go away. Put him in the same bucket, but expose them all. Expose them all and let them all go. Because there's members of Congress who are still being seated right now in Congress, in the Senate, and in Capitol Police and around the different bureaucracies in D.C. There are people who are still employed with federal money who these types of issues got paid off to hush them up, to make them go away. Those people need to be held to account, just like you're going to hold Matt Gaetz to account. Gut them all, get rid of all of them, prosecute all of them, do whatever you have to do, but to every single one of them. I don't want to just see Matt Gaetz. I don't want to, and even if he's wrong, do the same thing. Get rid of him, right? Get rid of the guy. If he's guilty, I don't want him involved in anything that my taxpayer dollars pay for. However, don't stop there. Why is that fair? Why is it fair after you already dropped the charges on this guy to bring it back up simply because he's being promoted for another job, which, by the way, he can't be investigated anymore. So the only thing they can do is release the original report that they had on him for the investigation. So again, they have to explain why they dropped the charges. It may start to result in a lot of other people tumbling down as far as from the hierarchy up, coming down for letting this actually get covered up if Gaetz was actually guilty in the first place. But I will be very upset if just the report on Gaetz comes out and everybody else still gets to be hidden in all of this. That's what's wrong with this system. We're covering up people who are being abused out there. Children, adults, sexually, mentally, physically abused. We use this money, we make this stuff go away, and these people get off without even so much as a slap on the wrist.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. Give me some ammo!